Good evening and welcome to Alaska TV Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Thanks for joining us this evening. As always, we've got that contact information at the bottom of the screen. That's your best way to get a forecast outside of this show, as well as to contact us with any comments or feedback that you have. You can dial that forecast recording line 24 hours a day for a forecast at 1-800-472-0391, or you can always visit us online at weather.gov/Alaska. We have one notice we want to let everybody know about. We are going to see some data impacts this coming Saturday, August 22nd, between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. You may notice forecast updates are delayed, so you could see an old forecast on the website. Some observations are going to be unavailable during that time period. The Alaska Weather Information Line may have delayed updates as well, so if you call in for that forecast, you may get a slightly older forecast. It might not update during the day, and we'll have the outage of some NOAA weather radio stations, including AKwx, Kotzebue, Nome, Bethel, St. Paul, Unalaska, Cold Bay, and Yakutat. The building that houses all of the things that make these data run is going to be having a scheduled power outage during the day on Saturday. So that is going to be the reason for these data impacts, but just be aware, again, that's Saturday, this coming Saturday, August 22nd from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. We appreciate your patience, and we'll get everything back up and running and updated as quickly as possible after the power outage. Taking a look at our hazardous weather, the map looks the same as it did yesterday because we have that same red flag warning in effect for today through 7 p.m. for the Mat-Su Valley. That is for hot, dry, and windy conditions. We're looking at temperatures in the upper 70s for a lot of locations and some windy conditions, so that could mean the rapid ignition, growth, and spread of any fires. So those in the Mat-Su Valley today, again, that's through 7 p.m. Make sure you're being extra careful with anything that could start a fire, because again, we could see rapid ignition, growth, and spread of any fires. Looking at our satellite imagery today, we can see that same low that we've seen the last few days spinning off the coast of the Panhandle. That's going to be bringing some rain into the Panhandle today. We can also see our next system approaching from the west with all of that moisture flowing into the western Aleutians today. For most of the interior, we're cloud-free today, although we do have some fog that we can see with those lighter gray colors over the Yukon Delta and up into the Seward Peninsula. We also have some moisture streaming into the eastern interior today. Taking a look at our surface map for today, we see that low off the Panhandle as well as a secondary low over the Prince William Sound area. We're going to have two distinct areas with a chance of thunderstorms this afternoon and this evening. The first is our typical afternoon thunderstorm for this time of year. That is over the eastern interior from about the eastern Brooks Range down to just north of the Alaska Range. The second is in the Panhandle, where we haven't seen a lot of thunderstorm activity lately. It's going to be for the southern Panhandle north to about as far north as Petersburg. And that's with that relatively strong low pressure system sitting just offshore, providing the forcing for those possible thunderstorms. We can see high pressure over the Bering Sea for today, and so with that light flow with the high pressure dominating, we'll see fog, as we can see in the satellite image, along the Bering Sea and in the YK Delta, the west coast, and also fog up into the North Slope with additional high pressure in command over the Beaufort Sea. For tonight, we still have that low pressure offshore of the Panhandle, so that's going to be bringing some more showers into the Panhandle itself, but dry conditions over pretty much the entire mainland of the state down through the Alaska Peninsula and even into the eastern Aleutians tonight. But for those dry areas, the coastal areas at least, we will see some fog sticking around or developing tonight from the North Slope to the Chukchi Sea coast, the west coast, and down through the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians. We do have our next system that's going to be moving east tonight, low pressure centered over the Kamchatka Peninsula over Russia, but bringing a warm front and cold front with rain starting into the western and central Aleutians. For Friday, we still have that low that's weakening, but still off the panhandle. So continuing showers for a lot of the panhandle on Friday. A smaller area over the eastern interior near the Yukon River with a chance of thunderstorms again on Friday afternoon. Also some showers over the western Alaska range, but looks like a dry western third of the state as well as dry along the north slope. That high pressure over the Beaufort Sea remains in command, but the high pressure that we had over the Bering Sea is going to start shifting south on Friday as we have that next system continue to march east. It's going to be pushing that high pressure south. So we've got an occluded front moving into the Aleutians with rain for the eastern Aleutians and up through much of the Bering Sea. Dry conditions, though, it looks like for Friday for the western Aleutians behind that front. For Saturday, we still have low pressure sitting off the panhandle, continuing to weaken. In fact, we'll see quite a lot of weakening between Friday and Saturday, up to 1,008 millibars by Saturday. But we'll still see some showers associated with a trough stretching north of that low pressure system. We also have some weak low pressure developing over the interior. That's going to spark some chance of some thunderstorms over the central western interior. Also, we have a trough coming from that low moving over eastern Russia that's going to be pushing showers into the west coast as well as the eastern Aleutians and the southern Alaska Peninsula. Dry, though, for a lot of the southern Bering Sea on Saturday behind that trough, with just a few spots of rain for the western Aleutians on Saturday. Taking a look at temperatures for Friday morning, pretty much more of the same as what we're looking at. We've got temperatures in the low to mid 50s for the panhandle on Friday morning. Same story for South Central, stretching up into the interior, a little bit cooler, mid 40s to upper 40s to around 50 degrees for the interior as well as the YK Delta. A little bit cooler for the West Coast Seward Peninsula area with temperatures in the mid 40s. And as always, our coolest temperatures along the North Slope, upper 30s to low 40s there. For Friday afternoon, this is going to be our warmest day this week for most areas. So from the Panhandle, looking at mid 60s to South Central, looking at temperatures as high as the mid 70s to that 79 there at Talkeetna and the Matsu. And then even across the interior, some low to mid 70s, 74 at Fairbanks, around 70 or low 70s up in the Yukon Flats. Even a few degrees warmer for the West Coast as we look at 54 degrees at Nome, 52 at Savunga. And then looking at North Slope, we'll even see some temperatures reach up into the mid 50s north of the Brooks Range on Friday. For Saturday morning, we are looking at temperatures again, low to mid 50s for the Panhandle as well as South Central, upper 40s to around 50 for much of the interior. A little bit warmer for the YK Delta area with temperatures in the low 50s on Saturday morning, and a little bit warmer for the North Slope as well. Some upper 30s, 39 at Utqiagvik, but some temperatures not even reaching below the mid 40s for Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, it's hard to call it a cooling trend, but it will be a couple of degrees cooler in a lot of locations for Saturday afternoon than what we're expecting for Friday afternoon. So we have actually a number of degrees cooler for the Panhandle with temperatures just in the upper 50s to around 60. And then for the mainland interior, some low 70s, a little bit cooler in the Matsu with 76 at Talkeetna. Temperatures in the upper 50s to around 60 for much of the West Coast, and then around the low to mid 50s for the Seward Peninsula on Saturday afternoon. Taking a look at what we can expect potentially for this fall, the Climate Prediction Center just issued today their latest forecast outlook for the September, October, November timeframe. So that's what we're looking at here. Pretty much the whole state has an increased chance of higher than usual temperatures. It looks like the confidence is highest for the northern part of the state from the western Seward Peninsula all the way across the North Slope, with a greater than 70% chance of higher than usual temperatures. Now that's an average temperature over the 3 months, so it doesn't mean that it won't ever be below normal, but when you average those together, expect warmer than usual conditions this fall. And as we look at precipitation, favoring wetter than usual for the North Slope as well as the southwestern portion of the state from the YK Delta down through the Alaska Peninsula. Not much in the way of the forecast for the rest of the state.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at aviation weather for Friday morning, we're expecting IFR conditions across much of the west coast as well as all the way down through the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Also some IFR conditions for much of the immediate North Slope as well as portions of the northern Gulf. For Friday afternoon, not a whole lot in the way of improvement, so we're still seeing IFR from the west coast down through most of the Bering. Some improvement to MVFR for the western Aleutians as well as the western Bering though, and that IFR for the North Slope looks like it should relegate to just the very immediate coastal sections, but mostly up in the Beaufort Sea. Some IFR developing along the southernmost portion of the coastal panhandle as well, but VFR conditions for most of the state for Friday afternoon. Saturday morning, we have that IFR returning to the North Slope and some improvement for portions of the west coast, but we'll still see IFR conditions from St. Lawrence Island and the western tip of Seward Peninsula down through the YK Delta and into the eastern Aleutians and the southern Alaska Peninsula. IFR also developing over the western Aleutians. MVFR for the Panhandle on Saturday morning, with also MVFR for the northern side of the Seward Peninsula. Saturday afternoon, we still have some IFR conditions for the Seward Peninsula down through the YK Delta as well as southern portions of the Alaska Peninsula and the western Aleutians, but we have MVFR for much of the immediate western portion of the state down through the northern Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay areas. That MVFR going to be stretching all the way through the Bering Sea and much of the Aleutians, although it does look like for the central Aleutians we'll see some VFR conditions. MVFR continuing Saturday afternoon for the Panhandle with VFR conditions for the eastern 3/4 of the mainland for Saturday afternoon. Looking at pass conditions for Friday, Anaktuvuk Pass VFR for Friday, as well as Adigan Pass VFR for Friday. Lake Clark and Merrill Passes both expected to be VFR all day on Friday, as well as Rainy Pass VFR on Friday. Windy Pass VFR, but we do have a chance for thunderstorms during the afternoon hours at Windy Pass. Isabel Pass VFR and Mentasta Pass starting out MVFR on Friday morning, but improving to VFR Friday afternoon. Tanita Pass VFR through the day on Friday, but again, we do have a chance of thunderstorms Friday afternoon at Tanita Pass. Portage Pass, same scenario, VFR, but looking at the possibility of some thunderstorms Friday afternoon. And Chilkoot and White Passes both looking VFR for Friday. Taking a look at freezing levels for Friday morning, our main warm air is coming up from the south through the Aleutians. So we've got 14,000 feet coming up to the eastern Aleutians, 12,000 feet stretching from the southern Alaska Peninsula to the western Aleutians, 10,000 feet across the west coast of the state mainland, and then decreasing further west as we head from there. Around 8 to 10,000 feet over most of the state from the Panhandle through the eastern 2/3 of the mainland. No significant icing expected on Friday. So if we look at jet stream, we can see low pressure near the Panhandle as well as over eastern Russia. We have our main jet south of that low in eastern Russia over the western Aleutians from about 85 to 125 knots out of the west that jet is. We've got a secondary jet well east of the low near the Panhandle over western Canada, about 90 knots out of the south with that jet. 9,000 foot winds, low near the Panhandle and low over eastern Russia again. So 30 to 45 knots of wind around the west side of that low near the Panhandle. So those winds over the Gulf area. And then over the Aleutians, we have a broad area of 35 to about 45 knot winds. That's going to be out of the west to a little bit of southwest. But pretty light winds over much of the state from the Alaska Peninsula north to the North Slope, just 5 to 10, a couple of spots of 20 knot winds. 3,000 foot winds, 35 to 40 knots around that low near the Panhandle, and about 30 to 40 knots over the Aleutians up through the Bering Sea. That's going to be out of the south, but again, not much wind over the mainland, and no significant turbulence for Friday.
Hey there, my little sunspots. Trace, your friendly neighborhood star nerd here, and this week is a new moon, so stargazing is gonna be lit. What better time to look for the Great Square of Pegasus, one of my favorite asterisms. Wait until 11:30 p.m. and head outside looking east. There should be a diamond shape of 4 bright stars starting at the bottom and going clockwise. They are Algenib, Alpheratz, Shiat, and Marta. This asterism comprises part of Andromeda and the constellation Pegasus, the winged horse ridden by Hercules. Though he's upside down right now, he is still a beautiful boy. Bonus points if you use Shiat and Algenib to draw a line right to the ruddy glow of Mars. Check out Pegasus and other constellations on this extra dark night while you keep looking up.
The beluga whale, also known as the white whale, lives in large groups and are unusual among whales. They have no dorsal fin, large bulbous heads, and they can actually swim backwards. To feed, they produce sound to find and hunt fish and invertebrates, and they use sound to communicate.
They're also known as the canaries of the sea because they make such a diversity of noises. They make chirps and whistles and gurgles and trumpeting sounds. They just make all kinds of sounds.
In the U.S., beluga whales live in the cold waters of Alaska, and there are 5 separate populations. Of those 5, the Cook Inlet population is the smallest, and has declined by about 75%. Subsistence hunting may have contributed to this initial population drop, but this practice was regulated starting in 1999, with the last hunt in 2005. Still, the beluga population here has yet to recover.
We listed Cook Inlet beluga whales as an endangered species under the Endangered Species Act in 2008, and we had hoped that the population would start recovering, but we are still seeing a continued decline. And these beluga whales are only found in Cook Inlet, and so if they go extinct, we don't think any other belugas will come back and populate this area.
These whales spend most of their summer near Anchorage, Alaska's largest city, where threats to belugas are on the rise as the city grows. These may include diminishing food, habitat loss or destruction, pollution, toxins, and human-caused noise which hampers their ability to feed and communicate. Researchers are trying to understand which of these threats may be impacting them most, but Cook Inlet is a tough place to work.
It's really hostile for research. We have the strong tides, which makes it challenging for human safety, and we can't see through the water. It is very muddy, so we're pretty much limited to the part of the animal that breaks the surface of the water. And as a result, we have limited information about the specific population dynamics of Cook Inlet beluga whales.
Up until recently, information has mainly come from annual aerial surveys from aircraft, and boat or shore-based photo identification surveys that use unique markings to tell animals apart. Scientists also use passive acoustics to listen for belugas, but none of these methods can detect much information about their health.
So it's really been a game changer with the whole species in the spotlight designation. We've gotten more resources within our agency.
For instance, we're able to use a drone to collect some aerial imagery of belugas in the wild, and we're hoping to learn some information about the age classes, information about the health status.
And probably the most important bit of information that we'll get out of that is we'll be able to identify the new calves. And we're hoping if we keep doing this every year, we'll be able to get an estimate of calf production every year that will tell us something about how well the population's doing.
We are also expanding upon our biopsy studies, hopefully to give us some information about sex, the individual's reproductive status, some genetic information, some contaminant loads.
Public and private partners are contributing as well. Some are looking at toxin levels in the whale's prey, while others are analyzing beluga teeth to learn about their age and past diet. Others monitor water quality and how belugas react to boats, and more check to see if their behavior changes with increased background noise. All of these findings will go toward developing effective recovery strategies for this population.
As for what you can do, if you're out boating, give belugas space. Don't drive right up next to them. Stay about 100 yards away. If you're flying over them, just remember that you're putting noise into the water as well, and so stay at least 1,500 feet above them. Report a stranded beluga whale as soon as possible, and that's if they're dead stranded or live stranded. The amount of information that we can learn from these animals by responding to a stranding is monumental, and it will help our efforts to recover them.
Together we can help beluga whales thrive in the dynamic waters of Cook Inlet. With continued research and good stewardship, we hope to see this population grow in the years to come.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Taking a look at your marine forecast, starting with the sea ice edge, we're continuing to see ice free along the entire Chukchi and Beaufort Sea coasts. And in fact, a significant ice-free tongue has developed north of Utqiagvik up into the ice pack in the Beaufort Sea. That's the latest development over the last 24 hours or so. We expect with continuing southerly winds over the next few days that we'll continue to see the ice edge creep further north through early next week. For southeast winds and seas for Friday, we're looking at generally northerly flow, although some easterly flow in the eastern Gulf for Friday. 10 to 25 knots in the Gulf and 5 to 10 knots for those inside waterways. Seas still a little bit elevated with that low pressure still offshore the Panhandle, with 9 to 11 feet for the southern Gulf and 7 to 8 feet in the northern Gulf. Pretty small seas for the inside waterways for Friday, though, just 2 feet. For Saturday, we'll see both winds and seas come down over the Gulf, just 10 to 15 knots out of the west and northwest for the Gulf, with 5 to 6 foot seas. For the inside waterways, generally southerly flow at about 10 knots with 2 to 3 foot seas. For South Central on Friday, we've got northerly flow, northerly or northwesterly, 10 to 20 knots with strongest winds on the south side of South Central, the south side of the Kenai Peninsula, about 20 knots there, 10 knots out of the north with 2 foot seas in Prince William Sound, looking at 3 to about 7 foot seas in the Gulf itself, with those highest seas in the northern Gulf for Friday. Saturday, not much change in the way of wind speeds, still 10 to 20 knots, although we will see some more westerly and southerly flow on Saturday. Seas coming down a little bit, 5 to 6 feet for the Gulf, 2 to 3 feet for Cook Inlet, and still just around 2 feet for Prince William Sound. Friday for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas, 15 to 20 knots out of the northwest and west. Looking at 4 to 6 foot seas in the Gulf and around 3 feet for the Bering Sea and Bristol Bay. And then looking ahead into Saturday, winds coming up a little bit and shifting to out of the southwest. So around 20 knots out of the southwest. Seas coming up just slightly for the Gulf to about 6 feet and to 3 to 4 feet for the Bering Sea side. For the Aleutian chain on Friday, we're looking at generally southerly flow to about a little bit southwesterly, anywhere from about 20 to 25 knots across the Aleutians. Winds a little bit lighter on the south side of the eastern Aleutians, about 15 knots out of the southwest. Seas ranging from 4 to 6 feet, pretty much across the board, slightly higher for the western Aleutians at 7 feet. And then going into Saturday, we'll have winds and seas both decreasing in general for most of the Aleutian chain. Still out of the southwest, 15 to 20 knots, although we'll see our highest winds as well as our highest seas in the western Aleutians. Out of the southwest, 25 knot winds and about 8-foot seas there. For the west coast, also generally southerly flow for Friday, anywhere from 15 to about 25 knots. We do have some northwesterly flow off the Kuskokwim Delta and some westerly flow at 10 knots for the Norton Sound. Just 1-foot seas in Norton Sound, increasing as we get out into the open Bering to 5 to 8 feet. And for Saturday, looking at 15 to 20 knots out of the south and southwest. Seas actually coming down just slightly for the Bering to 6 to 7 feet. For the Arctic coast, we've got easterly flow across the North Slope, 10 to 15 knots, and southerly flow continuing for the Bering Strait and Chukchi Sea, about 15 to 25 knots there. Heading into Saturday, winds increasing for the North Slope to about 20 knots out of the east and southeast. And then for the Chukchi Sea, 15 to 20 knots also out of the east and southeast. Those seas coming up just slightly to about 3 to 4 feet. But on the south side of the Bering Strait, we do have 7-foot seas for Saturday. Recapping what we're expecting for tonight, continuing showers with low pressure hanging around near the Alaska Panhandle. The next system bringing some rain into the Aleutians. Fog for the rest of the Aleutians on the west coast and North Slope with dry conditions over the mainland.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.